This presentation is focused on the stress of the Russian verb. It follows the same general procedure as my paper on Russian noun stress. I will first review the main principles of Russian stress as an opposition which can apply equally to the noun and verb. Next, the stress of the Russian verb system will be compared and contrasted to that of the noun by way of introduction to the subject, after which the various types of verb stems will be presented in terms of their accentual properties. The vast majority of Russian words, both verbs and nouns, have constant stress on a fixed stem syllable in all of their forms. For these words, you just have to remember where the stress is. This type is referred to as stress type A. For example, завтракать, завтракаю, завтракаешь, плакать, плачу, плачешь, плачу, ставить, and so forth. This type can also be called lexical stress, because a single accent mark on a word or lexical item determines where the stress is in all of the forms. In comparison to type A, Russian stress is more difficult when the accent is not on the same syllable in all the words, the word forms. These types can be divided into types B and C for both the noun and verb. Both B and C stress types can have end stress, define the stress on the first syllable of the grammatical ending or dissonance. They differ in that B can also stress the stem final syllable, while C can also stress the word initial syllable, in addition to end stress. This can be called grammatical or morphological stress. Grammatical positions determine the stress under certain phonological conditions. For the noun, singular and plural forms together are known as the paradigm. Singular or plural forms viewed separately can be called the subparadigms. The two main subparadigms of the verb are the non-past, including present and perfected future, and the past. Other non-conjugated forms to be looked at in the survey are the infinitive, imperative, verbal adverb, and past passive participle. The two basic types of morphological stress are called types B and C for both the noun and the verb. Types B and C have two possible stress positions. Type B can stress either the ending or the stem final syllable, that is, the syllable right before the ending. Type C can stress either the ending or the word initial syllable. Recalling that type A can stress any stem syllable, we can make a diagram, as is on the handout, comparing all three stress types, where the underline shows possible stress for each type. A having possible stress anywhere on the stem, B having this possible stress either right before the grammatical ending or right after it, and C having stress possibly at the very initial position of the word or the initial position of the grammatical ending. The above scheme applies to the two major subparadigms of both the noun and the verb, in the case of the verb non-past and past. However, past passive participles also have a shared BC stress type, which stresses the next to last stem syllable. For example, the participle prachita. It's important to understand something about mobile and immobile stress within a subparadigm. A given subparadigm can have identical stresses in all of its forms, in which case we would say that the subparadigm has immobile stress. But a subparadigm can also have a single deviating stress opposed to all of the other stresses within the same subparadigm, and in this case, we would say that the subparadigm has mobile stress. Most instances of stress types B and C in the verb have two predictable realizations in either subparadigm, that is to say, present non-past or past tense. One of those realizations being mobile stress and the other being immobile. In order to understand the Russian stress system, it is essential to be familiar with the immobile and mobile realizations of types B and C in the non-past and past tenses. let's take a look at the behavior of type B in its immobile and mobile types. Both in the non-past or present and past tenses, stress type B can be either immobile or mobile, depending on certain phonological features of the verb stem. Type B immobility always means stem final stress in the Russian verb. For example, читаю, читаешь, or стригла, стригли. Type B mobility in the non-past tense or present means end stress on a single vowel ending. For example, the first person singular, and stem final in the other forms. For example, прошу, просишь. Type B mobility in the past tense means end stress on the feminine past ending and stem final in the other forms. For example, забрала, забрали. In the case of type C immobility and mobility, we can say the following. Type C only has immobile end stress in the non-past or present tense. It does not have accent mobility in the non-past tense at all. For example, несу, несешь. The type B immobile past stress also has end stress. Несло, несли. Now, type C mobile stress occurs in the past tense, and it has a single end stress on the feminine past ending, just like the type in the B mobile past. But all of the other forms have initial stress in type C instead of on the stem final as in type B. For example, прожила, прожили. If the stem only has one syllable, the difference between initial and stem final is neutralized and can't really be readily seen. And it can only really be seen if the stem is prefixed, which is why in many cases examples are given with a prefixed form so that the difference between initial and stem final stress can be clearly seen. It may be recalled that the noun can have different realizations of accent types B and C, which depend on certain declensional endings, such as the genitive case for accent type B and the nominative case for accent type C. For example, in the noun, if the subparadigmatic genitive case is 0, then noun B stress is predictably realized as stem final. But if the genitive is not 0, then the B stress is final or end stressed in the subparadigm. Type C has similar relations to the form of the nominative case. Now, in the Russian verb, there are two main factors that determine the value of type B and type C stress. They often correlate with the choice of a mobile or immobile stress pattern. The first of these is stem length, which can be defined as the number of syllabic morphemes in the stem, not counting the prefix. So-called long stems have syllabic roots plus a vocalic or syllabic suffix, that is to say, 2 syllabic stem morphemes. The so-called short stems have either a syllabic root or a syllabic suffix, but not both, and in some cases neither. That is to say, they contain fewer than 2 syllabic stem morphemes. Now, the second major factor, in addition to the stem length, is the sonority of the stem final segment in the stem. Now, long stems can only end in a vowel or a sonorant and do not play any role in the determination of the stem final segment. However, short stems can end in a vowel, a sonorant, or an obstruent. Thus, a short stem can end in a higher sonority final, such as a vowel or a sonorant, or a lower sonority final in the case of an obstruent stem. Now let's look at some examples. The two criteria of stem length and stem final can be shown in 2 charts that appear in the handout. In the first case, we are looking at verb stem length types, and we see that a long stem occurs where we have two syllables in the stem, such as prasila, where we have prasi, two syllables constituting the stem. This can be contrasted to a short stem, such as nyesu, where we only have a single syllable, nyes, or a case of a deleted suffix e, where we're only left with the root syllable, as in prosit, prosit, where there also is a short stem. A third type of short stem can occur where the root is non-syllabic and we have a single suffix vowel, such as vrala. There can also be a short stem with no syllable in the stem whatsoever, as in vriot. Now, as far as the sonority types within the short stem category go, we can have the low sonority final when an obstruent ends the stem, as in piku, pikla, nyesu, nyesla, or we can have a high sonority final when either a vowel or a sonorant is at the end of a short stem. For example, a vowel can end a short stem in the word vrala or zvala, and a basic stem can end in a sonorant, stanu, живу, начала, жила, плыла. Notice that v in general phonology usually counts as an obstruent. However, within the system of Russian conjugation, we consider it behaves like a sonorant because historically it came from one and patterns as a sonorant. Now, this list of two types gives us two binary features. Number one, a long stem versus a short stem. Number two, a low sonority final versus a high sonority final. And the basic stress rule for types B and C in the two verb tenses can be stated as follows, that in the non-past tense, we have a choice of two kinds of B stresses, mobile for short stems, immobile for long stems. In the case of non-past C, there's only a single realization, just a single C type in the non-past, which has end stress, by the way. No mobility at all. In the past tense, both B and C can be either mobile or immobile. Now, both B and C are mobile in the case of a short high sonority stem, that is ending in a sonorant or a vowel, but B and C share immobility in the case of an obstruent stem, that is to say, either a long stem or a short stem, which would be an obstruent stem. We shall now look at the various patterns of A, B, and C stress that can occur. First, they will be considered separately for the non-past and past tenses. The reasons for variation, such as stem length and stem final, will be indicated, and it will be seen that our chart of the two major parameters can predict a large number of stress variations, using the minimal designations of just B and C. This is the alternative to stress systems which do not establish systematic rules, but list large numbers of stress types, many of which are really predictable. Now, if we take a look at the non-past realizations of the stress types A, B, and C, we see that type A is easy to understand, examples being stavit, lest, all the stresses are the same. Then we come to the mobile B type, the infinitive being prasit, and we have mobility, since we have a short stem in the present, prashu prosish. The next type we look at is a long stem, a long B. Now, since it's long B, it has to be immobile. That would be exemplified by chitayu chitayish, bileu bileish, and so on. That is to say, verbs having an I or ye suffix in the present tense. That covers the non-past realizations of A and B. When we come to the non-past realization of the C subparadigm, it's quite easy. It's never mobile, only immobile end stress. And that can be exemplified by несу, несешь, говорю, говоришь, and so on and so forth. Next, we come to the past tense realizations of these types. Again, type A just maintains the same stress of the non-past or present tense, but in the case of B and C, we see something rather different. In the case of B, the immobile type, which is found in either long stems or short obstruent stems, we see immobility on the stem final syllable. For example, просил, просила, стриг, стригла, стригли, and so on and so forth. The B mobile past tense is only found in the stems, short stems, which end in a vowel or a sonorant. So, for example, we can look at забрал, забрала, забрала, or заплыл, заплыла, заплыла, and these are examples of the B mobile past. When we come to the C types, the rules are very similar to the B past. That is, the C past types and the B past types are just about the same in terms of their predictability. The C immobile past is found within the obstruent type. Only unsuffixed obstruents have this, even when the obstruent is deleted, by the way. So we have нес, несло, несла, мел, мело, мела from месси, and in the case of the mobile past, here we have a sonorant. Sonorant stem, unsuffixed sonorant stem with C, and we have the shift to the initial syllable. Прожил, прожила, прожила, and the two suppletives, dats and buts, also follow this pattern. For example, задал, задала, задала, and so on and so forth. Non-past and past stress subparadigms have been presented separately in the above tables, since they follow somewhat different rules for the realization of B and C types. The next step is to assign a double letter designation for present or non-past, plus the past tense with a second letter, and examine the inventory of the various stress types that we get in this way. It so happens that the major types naturally break into two types. We have group 1, where types B and C admit only immobile stress in the past tense, and we have group 2, where types B and C admit only mobile stress in the past tense. The type that admits only an immobile past tense consists of non-suffixed obstruent stems and suffix stems with syllabic roots. The types that admit only mobile in the past generally have non-suffixed sonorant stems and suffix stems with a non-syllabic root. We can see that the A type in group 1 consists of the familiar verbs лезть, ставить, плакать, делать. Type BB would consist of просить, писать, вертеть, колоть. I'm giving these in the infinitive in the actual handout that accompanies this presentation. You can see the basic stems. There's a second BB immobile type, in which case we have a long stem, читай, белей, or читать, белеть, where we have an immobile present. Now, the CC type in group 1 would include грести, гребу, for example, нести, несу, вести, везу, and печь, пеку, for example. The BC type has only one root, мог, sometimes with prefixes, мочь, могу, помочь, помогу, for example, помогу, поможешь, which is the only obstruent type with a mobile B, but it fits the definition. because it has a short stem, and it's a B type. Next, we have a CB, where we have a C type in the present tense, or end stress, but a B type with the stem final in the past. That would be the group grüßt, passt, krast. For example, gryzu, gryzla, gryzli, and so on. It also includes a verb such as говорить, where we have an end stress C type in the present and a B stem final in the past. Говорю, говоришь, but говорил, говорила, говорили. When we come to group 2, we see that we have sonorants in type AA, stan, stat, dui, duet, dut, denu, denish, or date, all AA, marked on one syllable with no variations. Then the BB type is the single verb gnать, ганю, гонишь in the present, but гнал, гнала, гнали in the past. In other words, mobile in both the present and the past. The CC type consists of mobility in the past tense, but of course C can only be immobile end stress in the present or future, that is to say the non-past. So the non-past, начну, начнешь, but the past has the typical sonorant C mobility, начал, начала, начали, and so on, with other examples given on the handout. The BC type includes the only be present of sonorant verbs, the root ним, сниму, снимешь, обниму, обнимешь, подниму, поднимешь, that is to say the infinitives снять, обнять, поднять, and the C mobile past, for example, сняла, сняли, сняла, and so on. The CB type ends the list, and we have a verb such as зачать. We have зачну, зачнешь, but then зачал, зачало, зачала, for example. Also соврать, we have соврала, соврали, and so on and so forth. And that ends the survey of the various letter pairs, and you can find full paradigms in the handout of these types. Now I would like to comment on the stress of verb forms outside the non-past and past tenses, specifically the infinitive, imperative, and verbal adverb. Verbs do not differentiate B and C types in the imperative. The stress usually is the same as that of the first person singular non-past or present tense, the form in which B and C types usually coincide as end-stressed. Imperative stress is related to the choice of E or zero as the imperative ending. When the B or C stress types use the E ending, it is stressed. When the zero ending is used, in B and C stems ending in yot, for example, except for E suffix stems, the stress is stem final. For example, we have end stress with E in пеки, говорите, просите, or проси, раи, раите, рисуй. Рисуйте, on the other hand, and читай, читайте, show stress on the stem final because they end in yot. So if we have a situation of an end stress first person singular like пеку, говорю, we have пеки, говори, or пеките, говорите. If we have a situation of an unstressed U first person singular, рисую, читаю, In that case, we have a zero imperative and stress in the imperative on the stem final syllable. The stress of the present gerund follows more or less the same rule. If there is stress on the first person singular u, we generally get stress on the present gerund or деепричастие ending. So говорю yields говоря, прошу yields прося, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, when we have stem stress and we don't have stress on the first person singular ending, that stress is maintained in the gerund. So рисую, рисуя, читаю, читая. Basically the same stress as the first person singular. Now the reason behind the coincidence of the forms of the first person singular, present or non-past, the imperative, and the present gender lies in the fact that all of these three forms share a very important common trait. They all have a single vowel ending, or as it has been called, a simple vowel ending. Just a single vowel and no consonant at all. That would be the u ending of the first person singular, the e ending of the imperative, and the a ending of the present gerund. Now, several gerunds are lexical exceptions, and under the influence of adverbs have developed irregular stresses, which just cannot be predicted by the general rules. The best known of these are stoя, лежа, and сидя, which normally would have had end stress by the regular verb rules. Well, Russian dictionaries list these as anomalous exceptions, and our system cannot really do anything to make them more regular, and they have to be learned individually. Like the imperative, the infinitive stress generally depends on whether the infinitive ending has a zero vowel ending, that is to say the t with no vowel, or has an e vowel in the infinitive ending. If the infinitive ending is t, then the ending is stressed. The infinitive stress is closely related to that of the past tense. Verbs with past tense B stress and past mobile C stress have infinitive stress on the stem final syllable. But verbs with past tense C end stress, except for velars, have the T ending. So if we zero in on verbs that have the stressed ending in the past tense, we will see a T. So for example, гребло, грести, несло, нести, везло, вести. On the other hand, if we have anything other than that, просила, говорила, начала, and so on, with no end stress in all the forms of the past, then the infinitive has a stem final stress. Просить, говорить, начать, and so on and so forth. Now let's take a look at the past passive participle. The stress of the past passive participle depends on whether the stem size is short or truncated, or else whether it's long, having an undeleted suffix vowel. There are two totally different situations in the formation of the past passive participle stress. When we get a short stem, which either is unsuffixed or with a deleted vowel, specifically E vowel, because the E suffix vowel is the only vowel that gets deleted in the formation of the past passive participle. In that case, the stress has the opposition of B versus C, and we get an A, B, and C difference. When we have a short stem, say unsuffixed, such as obstruent or sonorant, the past tense is the basis for the participial form. So, for example, we have ukrali, ukrala, and we have ukradena as the stress of the participle. We have принесло, принесла, принесли, and we have end stress in the past passive participle. Принесено, принесена, and so on and so forth. But in the case of a deleted e suffix, of course, the e suffix is deleted in the present tense also, not the past tense. So therefore, the deletion of the e suffix follows the present tense. In that case, the participial stress of the past passive participle follows the stress of the retracted present tense, be mobile, or the end stress of the C end stress in the present tense. So, for example, if we look at the present tense of apresit, we'd have it would be the future tense, of course, the past, the non-past tense of apresit, aprashu, aprosish. Based on aprosish, we would get the participle aproshena. On the other hand, if we look at приговорить, we'll have приговорю, приговорят, end stress of the C type in the present tense, and we'll get the very same end stress in the participial form. Приговорено, приговорена, приговорены, and so on and so forth. When a long stem occurs, which has a suffix vowel that only adds an N and does not get deleted in the participial form, the situation is completely different. We get a merged stress of B and C, and we have the retraction of the stress to the syllable before the stem final syllable. Notice that the reason why the stress maintains its opposition in the E suffix type is because a vowel suffix is used, the ON suffix for the participle. In all of the other vowel suffix types, instead of an ON suffix, they merely use an N suffix in the formation of the participle, which means that the actual verbal suffix stays intact. So the entire issue of the participial stress and formation deals with whether the original verbal suffix stays intact or gets deleted. In case the stress stays intact because of using only an N, then B and C become equal. And here are some examples of where we have B and C stress both equal. We have organizovana and skovana, in spite of the difference in the actual stress of the non-past form. Moving further down the list, we have the forms napisana and asmiana with merged B and C, that is to say equal stress in B and C, in spite of a difference in the non-past tense. We have napishet, but asmiot, a B and C difference. But since the suffix, the a suffix, is intact in the participial form, B and C merge, while in the present tense, the a suffix is deleted, permitting the B and C difference to be maintained. Similarly, if we look at some of the other forms, for example, пересмотрено, пересижено, we have an equal B and C because of the yes suffix. However, in the non-past form, we do have a difference because that yes suffix is deleted. So the point is, these verbs count as short stem verbs, allowing the B and C difference. In the non-past tense, пересмотрит, but пересидит. But when we come to the participial form, because the N suffix is used and added on to the yeah suffix, which is not deleted in this particular verb type, we have a merged B and C in the participial form. Well, that summarizes the stress of the past passive participles and finishes our presentation for now.